Welcome to another episode of our Thought Leader series with Student Garden. Super excited to be joined by James Martin from Insider today. Welcome, James.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Perhaps if we could start off, if you could tell us a little bit about Insider. We were just chatting before about your journey. I think it'd be really useful for the listeners to kind of hear about, I guess, the evolution of the business and a bit about kind of what you guys do.
Yeah, I mean, it all started, I guess, 2007, and everyone wants to start a business when they're in uni, and I was lucky enough to sort of realize that I was working in a bar, and a whole bunch of students would come in, and they just didn't. I don't even know why they were going to this bar. It was a terrible bar, I just went up to them. I said, "How did you find out about this place? This place is terrible." And they were like, "Well, no one really told us where to go," and dug a bit deeper and realized that. I've always been a big fan of like guidebooks and Lonely Planet and things like that. And turned out there was like very little in that space for international students. So I was like, well, I'm studying international studies and marketing. I could probably do this on the side, and found my co-founder pretty quickly. And we got to work creating a little business where we'd basically create a Lonely Planet style guidebook for students coming to Adelaide. And over the years, we sort of evolved that into a print business again and again, and did it for different cities, and then we did it overseas, and then we turned it online, and fast forward, a decade or so, and got caught up in COVID.
Me and you both.
And then we lost a bunch of advertisers because there was no one advertising to reach international students when no one could get in, and so we realized, I guess at that point, what we were really good at was storytelling. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's sort of where we're at today in that evolution piece is, our business is about storytelling. We have the channel of Insider Guide still, but we also have a studio as well.
Yeah, I love the whole positioning around having like that first party data asset, like the audience with Insider Guides and the ability to obviously be able to test and understand stuff, but also it's like you've got an audience already ready to go. It makes heaps of sense to be able to extend, I guess, the content creation, storytelling skills you guys have built into, more of a service line for the business. So I kind of love that story and that journey, and we won't name the bar that you just called terrible. So would love to kind of get some insights into content and international students, obviously. Obviously the world is changing quickly. Obviously TikTok's a pretty prominent platform, unless you're a Chinese student, and maybe not so much. But would love to kind of hear, how do you guys think about, creating engaging content and telling these stories? Yeah. And what kind of channels do you think about as well when you're kind of creating the content?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on the goal of the content and where this content will appear. For our own channel, Insider Guides, we really prioritize the website. It's sort of our HQ, and then we have a little bit on social here and there. But I think good content marketers know which lanes they should play in, and they stick to it. And so we don't really play in like YouTube. We do a little bit in TikTok. We're trying it out, but our game is good quality content that it talks to students in at the right time in their journey. Mm-hmm. But for clients, how we offer that, I mean, that really comes down to, a bunch of assumptions that we're making about their ability to promote that content. What do they need it for? I think students want very specific content at different times in their journey, and they all consume content differently. Mm. And, our clients, one of the big issues I think in international education, if you go to a university, and you ask them, tell me about your content strategy, often you will find that they have sort of distilled their content strategy to a point where they try to be relevant to multiple markets at once. Yeah. And really that ends up being useless to all markets. Yeah. So part of the challenge we have is trying to clarify what are your content pillars, what are your key markets, and what formats and channels do you actually want to play in? And then we talk about what kind of content we should make. Mm. And then from there, I mean, then students move through this journey, pre-decision, like research, pre-decision, just arrived, first few weeks studying, and they all consume content differently at different points. So that's really how we view it is everyone is... for clients needing to get into this like space and do a better job, we just have to work out where they're good, where they're bad, and and try to work out that if we did create it, where would it go? Because there's no point creating it and it's
Totally,
sitting in a Dropbox for 10 months.
Yeah. And how much of the content is about, because I think about, for international students, so much of it is about connection, community. It's about the experience coming to Australia and learning and being part of our culture and community. How much of the content you're creating is about kind of the institution, the courses, and I guess the content the university or institution delivers versus the student experience stuff?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the business started as a student experience kind of business, so that's where our bread and butter is for the Insider Guide stuff. Students query that website and channel a lot with everything from like, how do you get a job? How do I not get ripped off by my landlord? How do you get a good coffee in downtown Melbourne CBD? What does a flat white mean? Whatever, all that.
Yeah.
They query the website with a bunch of those things. But for the institutions, the challenge is trying to convince our clients that is actually a useful content strategy for them as well, because a lot of them just want to talk about, the campus, the course, the outcome. You're like, well, that's not the only reason why students come to Australia. Sometimes they just want to, like, it is a luxury studying in Australia, and they're here to live. They've got money, or some of them have money, and they want to have an experience.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes institutions and councils and government, they forget that this is an experience, and you have to sort of meet them where they are. You're going to really meet students, at a point where they can feel great, not just like, oh, I'm going to go study. Like they're going to have a life experience.
Yeah, totally.
So.
And how much, and I'd love to hear how it's kind of evolved. Has it shifted from it being, I guess, more student-led, I'd imagine, kind of in more recent years? It's like, how much of what you do is kind of working with like ambassadors versus, sourcing talent and, having a relationship with students and curating that for, institutions versus like working with their ambassadors, or because I know a lot of them do have kind of ambassador programs already set up.
Well, it really depends on how they want to use the content, because sometimes the student might have a good story, but they're not a good storyteller. Yeah. And that's a big sort of thing we have to try to resolve with our client is, and just because they've got a great testimonial doesn't mean that testimonial is best being used to bring in another student. So sometimes the best thing to do is, us to we'll do all the pre-interviews of this student, work out that they're not meant for the screen at all. So we'll actually script up something completely different, and sometimes, you don't even need to use a student at all. Sometimes it's better to get an actor, or have a voiceover or something. Yeah, it really, like, this is the thing. A lot of people who work in content think that first person strategy and first person content, user generated content, is like the be all and end all. Well, that's fine until I don't say what you want them to say. you get to the end of
honesty.
Great. Yeah. And get to the end of the shoot, and the student's now gone. Yeah. And you're left with something that you can't really use that well. Yeah. And you're like, damn, I wish they would have said this and this. You're like, well, we probably should have thought of that in the pre-production.
I know. Well, that's it. It's like, you can create all the storyboards in the world, but it's like, it can be pretty challenging when you're kind of out in the field filming content. Yeah. Did I get a good shot of that? Did I not? So it's like, and it can be pretty challenging when you're trying to piece that all together, at a later point. So I definitely relate to that kind of within our own experiences. You kind of touched on this a little bit before. I read recently on your LinkedIn, you said, if you're a marketer in the international student space, you have to be ruthless when it comes to prioritizing markets. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and why, and I guess the good, the bad, and kind of the in-between?
Well, I mean, international education marketers have to market to the whole world, and that's not easy. And so you got to be ruthless when it comes down to who you're going to target, why you're targeting them, and how do you treat each segment. And as I was sort of alluding to before, you can't have the reality of that sort of content marketing approach is that it's got to work with the recruitment team. It's got to support the recruitment teams. And so you can't create vanilla content expecting it to be sort of reaching, millions of viewers and eyeballs and expect it to make a difference. So Yeah, in that post specifically, I think I was just sort of talking about the idea that, you know, once you identify which markets and which formats you prefer, then you can start thinking about, right, well, category one, you know, let's just say it's China, India, Vietnam. They get treated like this. They get a recruitment trip. They get 4 videos a year. They get a whole bunch of course materials, whatever. Category 3, on the other hand, you know, maybe it's some other countries, maybe they don't get any travel every year. They get maybe a course brochure and maybe a live streamed webinar or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just about thinking. I know it sounds super simple, but you'll be amazed at.
I'm not surprised at all to hear that. Yeah.
just a basic content. Just like a spreadsheet that's just basically saying, like, here are the 3 content pillars, here are the formats, here are the markets. We're not going to treat them all the same. We're going to treat these guys in this way and these guys in this way, and then start there, and then start thinking about what content will resonate with that category 1 versus category 4. And it's funny, you know, that's sort of something that a lot of marketers will know instinctively.
Yeah.
But when it comes to international, they've got a lot of pressure to perform in so many directions, and it takes discipline to be like, well, hold on, let's just like focus on a few.
And and you know, I think about it from the point of view of like the digital advertising perspective, you know, and it's kind of obviously you're carving up your budget kind of based on you know, where you think the opportunity is and you know, where the targets lie. But I think, you know, whether that's kind of married up to from a content perspective, I hadn't really thought about that. As like, you know, we're probably just thinking about it from the sense of like, you know, how do we just create amazing ads for everyone? But you know, thinking about it through the lens of obviously, if you've got more budget, you can have more of a full funnel strategy, which means you know, you can have video at the top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, you know, which I guess creates the opportunity to have more touch points, more content. So I guess that kind of really resonates and makes a lot of sense that you would kind of prioritize the content production or align the content production based on where you think you're kind of going to get the most cut through, and obviously the advertising spend as well.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, not every category is has the same problem. So one market might be a brand awareness problem.
Yeah.
And that requires a different kind of content approach to, you know, conversion. And you really, the goal of that bit of content is to get them to attend that virtual fair, that webinar, that thing, and get them into the funnel. And that's a totally different content strategy. So, and I think that's where some marketers sort of fall down, is they think they can clip the ticket a lot and sort of use the same bit of content 9 different ways. And you're like, well, you can, but only if it's hitting the same goal, you know what I mean? So
yeah, totally. And I'd be really interested to understand some of the work you kind of do. Obviously, the agents play a really key role in international student recruitment. Just how you how you empower that kind of audience to you know, promote the universities, colleges more effectively. Do you have much to kind of do in that space? And if so, what do you kind of do?
I mean, our involvement with agents is we distribute our guidebooks through them around the world. But from a content production perspective, our goal is really to sort of get these institutions to a point where they can give these agents something that they can use. You know, you'd be surprised at how many institutions would just sort of flick over a Dropbox link with, you know, maybe some course guides and some banners and stuff, and just say, look, there you go. Whenever you want to talk about us, that's
the collateral.
Go there.
Yeah.
But then, like, agents are representing hundreds of institutions, and they're not always gonna do that. So it's just about giving them simple assets that can be used in various ways. And I think that's something that they need to think about every month.
Yeah.
Like, how can we give our agents what they need to do the best job, and just remind them that this is relevant, or this kind of content is relevant for them, and just pull down stuff that isn't relevant.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally.
If it's up there.
And again, it comes to that comment of prioritization, right? It's like, you know, you'd rather have 2 or 3 amazing pieces of content that really are super relevant to that audience, whether it's a country or a study area or, you know, whatever, whether it's postgrad, undergrad. You'd much rather have just like 2 or 3 really good pieces of collateral or assets rather than like 10, 15 things that are like okay or, you know, kind of average.
Totally, yeah.
In terms of obviously like content production, you know, we're seeing like a massive increase in terms of the need. And obviously it's, whether it's video, static, whatever, it's, but video in particular is an amazing way to kind of reach and engage with prospective students. In terms of, for marketers who are looking to kind of develop skills and, kind of get into the space a bit more, what are some of the things, whether it's institutions trying to build the capability or whether it's marketers who are trying to kind of move into the space of content production, what are some of the kind of skills and, things that they should be thinking about?
I think the core skill is the art of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to know what a good story is, and you have to know how to recognize it, and then you need to know how to find it within your institution or your department or whatever. And that's really challenging. So once you find a good story, work out how a different, and then work with a provider or internally, try to work out how that story can come to life in different formats.
Yeah.
Key skill, really, really hard to do. And that's just something that is not happening enough of.
Yeah.
I think also around distribution.
Yeah.
Thinking about where it's going to go and how it's going to serve your content strategy once it's done. It's amazing how many brands will produce fantastic content only for it to appear on YouTube.
Yeah.
And that was the end of their strategy. Like, oh, why did you make the video? Oh, we're just going to put it on YouTube and hopefully people will find it. Yeah. You're like, well, what did you think about that's the thing with YouTube. Like, it's the second biggest search engine in the world. People go there to prompt questions, ask questions, and if you're not solving a problem, people won't find Joe Blogg's testimonial video.
Yeah, totally.
They need to find what is the cost of how much can I get paid as an engineer in Queensland or something like that.
Well, I love your comment before, what's a flat white, what's all that kind of I've seen some amazing content where it's international students who have just created awesome content when they've come here organically, whether it's I've seen a lot of it on YouTube, but it's on TikTok as well. So it's, to your point, it's those kind of question answer style videos obviously work well, but trying to do that at scale rather than trying to create an amazing high production ad, which obviously is important for that format, but not necessarily if you're going to be kind of distributing it via YouTube or other digital channels.
But there's really low hanging fruit as well. I mean, you could go on your website, have a look at the analytics and see which questions are being asked the most. And then compare that to your bounce rate, and and if they're bouncing off the Q&A page, when they're trying to, that question is not being answered properly.
Yeah, totally.
So you can start creating little videos around little questions and start putting them out through different channels, and that goes a long way. Not everything has to be super crisp, beautiful footage. It doesn't make your brand less by producing fast, good quality, and that's what you guys do really well. Good quality social media footage that you can just. It's like the always on approach instead of campaign focused. Keep it going, keep it moving, and answer student queries as they come up.
Yeah, and it's I think you nailed it before in terms of getting the distribution, thinking about the distribution before it's the kind of the story and the distribution, and it's kind of those two things together are what's going to kind of help you to kind of paint the best picture and get the best kind of outcome. And I think, a lot of the time it's when you're thinking kind of one size fits all when it comes to distribution, and you're thinking of creating a really long form video and then just cutting it up into heaps of short form videos, which kind of dilutes the story and the narrative. So I kind of definitely resonate with nailing those two things. And obviously, that kind of comes through planning, which obviously you guys are great at doing. And as you said at the start, developing a strategy and kind of filling in the gaps probably because I'm sure, again, a lot of these universities have amazing in-house marketing teams who are thinking about content and, but again, it's how do you kind of take what they're already doing and kind of really overlay your expertise around content creation, around understanding that market as well as they do also, and then kind of coming up with the strategy of cool, this is how we're actually going to connect and reach these students in an engaging way that's going to be meaningful and going to make them say, hey, I'm actually really interested in that university for all these reasons that maybe aren't necessarily just the course. And as you said, the testimonial of the person who just said that it was great and they got a job afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I'm not saying that you can't get multiple wins out of the same piece of content, because and it's not that it's always useless doing that, but it is very useful, but it has to be thought about with the right goal at the start. And I mean, it'd be silly to sort of set up get a whole crew in for a day and build like this amazing video for it to be only one video. Like take the opportunity, get some social clips, you know, maybe interview the student, like try to clip it and use it in 10 different ways. That's super good. But then how you get it out there needs to be thought about before you make the content. And, you know, what are the headlines going to be? What are the tags going to be? It's half the battle, right?
Yeah, totally.
Getting it out there.
Look, we're certainly excited to, you know, stay connected and see how the business kind of grows. And really appreciate you coming on and having a chat with us today. And look forward to staying in touch.
No, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Cheers, James.